For today's presentation, I'm doing 2 Samuel chapter 6. My name is Henry.
My name is Austyn.
And we got Ty and Trent here with us as well. So go ahead.
So 2 Samuel chapter 6 verses 1 through 5. So basically, after David defeated the Philistines, he became king of Israel, and God embarked him to a journey on grabbing the ark and bringing it back to Jerusalem. So in doing this mission, David gathered his selected few men, which was about 30,000 men, and his captains, right? And trying to bring back this ark to Israel, since it is a huge step for them, since the ark is actually would be a good place for worship to the Israelites, the people of Israel. And they said that this ark of God was supposed to be like this little chest or this little box, and it was really significant since it was covered in gold, which makes it, the value.
Ark of the Covenant.
Ark of the Covenant,
Yeah.
or Ark of God, right? The Ark of the Covenant was known to be like a very immediate presence of God to the people of Israel. So this box had a very significant meaning to them, and bringing it back to Israel was a top priority for David and his soldiers. So what happened was David's people put the ark on this little cart to transport it, but I know that it was said that it was not God's will for the ark to be transported on a cart. It was meant for it to be carried. So they kind of messed up a little bit right there with God's will. The men who guided the cart was Uzzah and Ahio. They were leading the cart down the hill. And when David and his people got back, they were celebrating by playing a lot of music with different instruments. And by the way that they were celebrating with music, you can tell that this was a very significant thing for David and his soldiers and the people of Israel. Bring back the Ark of the Covenant.
All right, I have 2 Samuel 6 verses 6 through 12. I'm going to read one of the verses to get it started. It said, when they came to the threshing floor of Nakon, Uzzah reached out, took hold of the ark because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of his irreverent act. Therefore, God struck him down, and he died, therefore, beside the ark of God. So I just wanted to discuss why was God angry, because when you read that, you want to figure out, was his anger justified? And it also says that whenever Uzzah touched the Ark of the Covenant, that made God angry. So this goes back into Numbers 4:15, which states when Aaron was dealing with the Ark of the Covenant, in verse 15 it said, when the camp is set to go, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them, but they shall not touch the holy thing lest they die. So Uzzah, even though he was trying to do a good thing by protecting the Ark of the Covenant, at the end of the day, the rule is if you touch it, you would die, and that's what made God angry, because the Ark of the Covenant is the Ark of God, and that's what comes as in what's the closest thing as into heaven. So touching that as an earthly being, I believe, me personally, that states that you're not holy enough and worthy enough to touch it at that time, because that's the rule that God has stated. Also, another question that made me curious about why God struck him is because I was wondering, was Uzzah a Levite? Because I know only really Levites or chosen ones were to deal with the Ark of the Covenant as well. So it's just a lot of scenarios which cause a lot of questions and concerns in that first verse of 2 Samuel. After God killed him, this made David mad, and because he didn't understand why God struck him dead right then and there. So what David did out of spite, he named the palace called Perez Uzzah to make God mad. So after David had done this, it said that he was scared for his life pretty much, because he didn't know what God was gonna do. He didn't know if he was struck down or anything else, because he did something out of spite just to make God mad, which as us human beings we do, which is not the right thing to do. So when David was in hiding, basically he tried to hide from God, or just stayed in solitude. He asked the question, which he stated, "What am I like? What is next?" Pretty much, what can he do? Like how can the ark of the Lord ever come to me? Because he just already made a mistake, and he doesn't know how God is still choosing him to do it. So this was a sign also that when after he was in solitude, that God said that he should still take care of the ark and take it to Obed Edom, to the house of Obed Edom. So this was another chance that God gave to David as a sign, that you could still take the Ark of the Covenant, which still helped him embark on his journey to continue to move the Ark to Jerusalem with the 30,000 men.
All right, so I had 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 13 through 17. All right, so once they took 6 paces, David sacrificed oxen and fatted sheep. It was a very big and excessive sacrifice. And after that, David began to dance before the Lord. Everybody was wondering why he was dancing. He began to dance because he was happy about bringing the ark back. He was happy to worship God. And then after that, David and the house of Israel brought the ark of the Lord back, along with yelling and the sounds of trumpets. And once the ark reached the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw David leaping and dancing and whatnot before the Lord. And she didn't despise him because of it. The only reason she despised him is really just because she didn't think that was how he was supposed to act right there. I mean, even though David was just happy about bringing the ark back, she thought that it wasn't really the right thing for him to do. And so then they brought the ark of the Lord, or the ark of the covenant, back, and they set it in the midst of the tabernacle. After many years, the ark was set in the most holy place once again. And after that, David offered burnt and peace offerings. The burnt offerings spoke for consecration, and the peace offerings spoke for fellowship.
At this point in the story, we've reached verses 18 through 23, which is pretty much the conclusion of the entire story. At this point, David has just finished sacrificing the burnt fellowship offerings that he blessed the people with in the name of the Lord. He fed each individual, whether that be man or woman, amongst that crowd in Israel, from a loaf of bread as well as different cakes, such as cakes of raisins and even cakes of dates. Once this was completed, he returned home and is greeted with scolds from Michal, who's also the daughter of Saul. She called him vulgar for choosing to do what the Lord had instructed him to do, but this was only because she didn't necessarily understand the severity of the situation. She didn't understand just how much he felt that this was his calling for him to take care of. But instead of getting upset, he humbly explained to her that this was in fact where he should be and what he should be doing. Throughout that explanation, he tells her, and quote, "It was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people, Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor." As far as the humiliation goes that he's referring to, he had the attire he had on was not necessarily how do I want to put this? The attire he had on was not necessarily respectful or acceptable. We'll go with acceptable in many people's opinions, especially being from the outside looking in and not really understanding the severity of the situation. Because of how she approached the situation, because of how she felt about what it was that David did, God denied her the ability to have children of her own for the rest of her life. And that concludes our presentation.
So after we talked about David, we just want you guys to your input on it as well. But one thing I want to know is, what do you guys think about God's anger towards Uzzah? And then what do you guys think about David rejoicing and with God after making his greatest accomplishment? Thank you.